Maybe. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Block, where we talk about writer's block and things that hinder us from being our creative selves. We have a special guest with us. I always point to the wrong side. John Maly, and I'll have him introduce himself and then Nicole.
Yeah, hi, my name is John Maly. I wrote a book called Juris Ex Machina, which is about not too far in the future situation where the judges and jury in the legal system are replaced by AI. And they are nearly perfect, but a young scofflaw gets wrongfully convicted and sent away to a strange prison where the inmates are also the guards. So he has to escape, and he and his attorney have to figure out what actually happened there. And I do a lot of writing about AI and legal concepts and technology. So it seemed like kind of a logical extension of the stuff I was already doing for my day job at the time.
Awesome.
Oh, and I should get my website, which is johnmaly.com. So, JOHNMA.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole, aka Linux Frost. I am one of the partners for the Writing Sisters and the Shanty Tales website. We recently celebrated our 400 subscriber mark. And I run this channel with Lauren, and we also have a second channel, Luna's Mystical Delights.
Awesome. And I do have John's website linked in the chat on YouTube. It's pinned to the top, and it's also scrolling down here on the bottom if you want to check him out. And we've got Eva with us. Hello, hello, hello. So, does anybody have any topics that they want to discuss before we jump into my pre-made ones?
You're not doing your intro soon?
You know what?
You didn't do your intro.
Oh, no. Because I never do. For whoever doesn't know me, I am a writer, Sam Wicker. I write romantasy for the most part. I do have a pen name under SW Lupine where all my darker, spicier stuff goes to. And it will soon be up on Ream. And I do apologize about the chainsaw in the background because, like I said, whenever I go live, that's when she starts snoring. And it's Miss Kona who is over here on the other side. I'm hiding her. Here soon, Hunter will start, I'm sure. Hey, Cat Paw, going for breakfast. I hope you have a good breakfast. So first things first, John, since you haven't been here before, what do you do to break out of writer's block or like a writing slump?
Yeah, so it's it's funny because I think that writer's block, breaking it it's difficult, but it's also very simple. And I think a lot of times it's just that we maybe don't like the sort of answer to the question of how to get out of it. And I learned this a few years ago.
Sorry.
What's that?
I'll be back in 1 second. Sorry, my mom's calling me.
Okay, that's fine.
So I guess the first really good piece of advice I got on this a few years ago was from one of my writing professors named Jack, and he kind of phrased it as like, it's really just about putting in the time. And so I think that when you sit down to a blank page, you sort of have to get into a conversation with it. And what that means is that you sort of have to have that awkward moment, the long awkward silence where you sort of stare at each other. And sooner or later, the silence will be broken by, one or the other of you that can't stand the awkwardness anymore. And, I think that it's really easy to avoid that, right? It's easy to go and pick some task that's on your list of things to do that day that you can accomplish. You can go do the laundry, or you can go like clean your kitchen because it's something you need to do. And then at the end of of doing that, you have this feeling of accomplishment, like, yay, I was productive. But you totally avoided the more sort of challenging thing of just staring at the blank page until one of you blinks and words start flowing. And I really think it is just about putting in the time and forcing yourself to stare at that blank page. And, you know, we have all these different types of tools and events and things that emphasize how many words you entered in a day. And I think it's, especially when your writing kind of slows down and you have to make some creative decisions, not even because you're necessarily blocked. It's really easy to just still kind of cling to those as a metric because it's so easy. You can say, you know, we can just take a number, right? You see this in the business world where people tend to cling to MBAs and stuff, tend to cling to these numbers instead of harder to measure metrics. And, you know, ultimately it's much more about putting in the time. So if you're stuck on your book, you know, maybe you just need to sit there for an hour and type whatever comes to mind. And that's not something that looks great at the end of the day and something that you can, you know, chart on a graph, but it's very helpful. And, you know, in the big picture, this sort of conversation with a blank page is your, it's really sort of an interface to your subconscious, right? Because ultimately who you're communicating with is yourself. And it's really just, you know, as writers, trying to make you better at communicating with yourself like the insane person that you are.
I like that. You got to break the awkward silence and, you know, communicating with yourself like the insane person that you are, because
He doesn't talk himself. You're right.
yeah. I used to have, and this is showing my age, the whole Nike just do it thing up here on the corner of my monitor, because sometimes you just got to sit down and write what you can when you can and forget about perfection, because that's usually what holds you back is perfection.
Yeah, and honestly, the days that it's hardest to do that are also the days it's most important to do that. So the less you want to do it, the more important it is that you force yourself to sit down and at least attempt it, because that's what it's really about, right? It's about forcing yourself to attempt it. It's you can't really measure each day by how many pages you generated. You have to measure each day by, did I advance the process, and did I learn some things about the story that I didn't necessarily know a week ago? Because, you know, just because you don't see words appear on screens that you can count, you still you did things that had to be done for the project to be finished. And so that's what you kind of need to measure your days by is did you advance your project? Not, you know, am I in this phase where I'm really prolifically typing a lot of stuff?
Yeah. Progress is always progress. Whenever you don't do anything, that's when you fail.
Agreed.
All right. So we're going to go with this question. Because this comes up a lot in some of our circles as authors, I'm sure. So how, as a writer, how do you keep up or build up your confidence? And John, if you want to answer first, and then we'll go to Nicole.
You keep up or build up your confidence? That's a good question. You know, I think if you just start off with none in the first place, it's easier to maintain that level. You know, if you really do want some confidence, I think one way to do that is just by having kind of objective goals at the start. And, you know, if that's, I'm going to stare at the screen for half an hour, then that's what it is. And, you know, when that's done, you have to let yourself off the hook and say, okay, I've done what I set out to do for today. You know, as with so many challenging things in life, it's a mistake to say, to sit there stressing about this thing that you have to do, or this looming thing in your life that's going to take months to resolve, and to be sort of like beating yourself up because you can't wrap it all up today, because that's not really possible, right? There's steps the steps you should be doing today, and you do those steps and you check them off and you say, okay, I'll come back to this tomorrow. I've done what I set out to do. So I think being nice to yourself when you're not actually writing, and you kind of earn the reward of calling it a day, and then you don't be afraid to enjoy that. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I can see your point. I feel like also you need like a support community, but also fits in because you're gonna have those days where you have low self-esteem or you get a bad review and it sends you on that downward spiral, and you need to pick yourself up and start again.
Yeah, definitely having a writing group, and to kind of for accountability in the first wave, but then like the second wave is if you're not meeting your stated goals or you're slowing down, people who are honest, and they'll point that out, and they'll say, where are you stuck? What is the problem you're currently wrangling with that's keeping you from wanting to write?
I like this. Y'all Yes, Eva. And I know you make steps and you do them because you get so much accomplished. So I don't want to hear it. This needs to 099 course. Oh, goodness. So, as someone who I don't have any confidence in myself, this has always been my battle. Once I build up confidence, I usually tear myself down because of, self-talk. And I'm working on it, I promise. But what John said and Nicole added to, as long as you are moving forward and you check those check boxes off, that's usually a lot of help towards your self-confidence and just feeling good. When you feel good about yourself, you're going to build confidence.
Yeah, another thing I think is really helpful is that when you're writing, like a good way to kind of suppress that self-doubt is to just write, because the beauty of writing is, you can work on a project for as long as you want and for as many months or years as you want. And you always have the luxury of deciding not to publish it or not show it to anybody. So, there's times when there is a lot of self-doubt, like when you're sending off initial manuscripts to people and they're actually going to, like, other people are going to read them. But until you do that, you can kind of write whatever you want. And, it's worth just being as open and free in your writing process as possible, because you're not really committing at that stage. And, you can write more openly and write less openly, and you can compare, I wrote this scene and then I wrote this scene, which turned out better. And that kind of experimentation really is essential. It's that's the nice thing about writing, though, is you can always just keep it to yourself later on.
True, and also when you're writing, you can pretend you're your characters and be a different person and add a little bit of fear to it, and not be in that mindset of self-doubt until you're done writing.
Absolutely.
Let's see, Eva says, my biggest obstacles are diagnosis, real talk. Following a list, a plan is harder than it sounds. I can plan and plan and plan. Check boxes do not get marked. I do get things done, just not the things I wanted to do based on the plan. I gotcha. Planners are Band-Aids on a head wound for me. Waste of resources for not much help. These are all very new realizations. I gotcha. And the first step to answering any problem is knowing that you have the problem.
Exactly.
So my dad always said that, and it's bored into my head. You got to admit the problem. So once you know yourself and how you work and the obstacles that you have, you can try to come up with tools to help you overcome them. And that's what we're here for, to help you build those tools, the arsenal, I guess, and get you over the obstacles.
Yeah, to me, you have a list, but then you have procrastination or anything that distracts you, then that causes a problem too.
Well, I think in the short term, right, it doesn't really matter what check boxes you're checking, as long as you're making progress toward one, sometime this week. And it's only in the long term when you start noticing that there's this checkbox that is still not checked and still not checked and still not checked. That's an indication that you're being avoidant and you're going and doing research on historical eras to get things correct, or you're researching locations or something, and you're doing things that are like easier at the expense of working on things that you're stuck on.
Right.
But when you're stuck, that's another great time to reach out to your writing group and just ask them for ideas, and undoubtedly they'll have something.
Yeah, definitely. Create a support group. Let's see. Recognizing those obstacles is a key step. Oh, thank you, Eva. I procrastinate far less often than others would claim I did. That's a good thing. Because usually it's the opposite. It's like, oh, all you do is procrastinate. But
The key is to procrastinate your procrastination.
All right. So moving right along. So does the stress or issues from your day job carry over into the creative side? And how do you get back into the headspace that you need in order to write? Nicole, you want to hit this first, and then we'll go to John?
So I wouldn't say like stress from work, but more like stress from life. Especially you're living at home with like family members that are kind of toxic. So for me, it will be either when I'm writing, you're having music playing or musicals to like create that more light mood or create more positive atmosphere while I'm writing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's, no matter what your source of stress, right? If it's health, or if it's job or family, or some delightful combination of all three. It's been. There's a great quote, and I'm forgetting the author who said it now, but it's hell is story friendly. And when you're going through some of the worst times in your life, there's always some aspect of them that you can channel. And you can make some notes, like whether you're sitting in like a day room at like a hospice, or you're like in a hospital, or if you're like just lost your job and you're like on the train home or something. There's always something that it's like this moment that like of authenticity that you can tap into that won't be accessible at another time in your life. And I think the important thing is to just keep all that stress from just flowing over you and becoming this big distraction, and then you don't write. Because I find that when I get the most out of writing from like a emotional standpoint is when I have all that stress going on. And you need to create this firewall where you just go to like a coffee shop or someplace you don't normally go without any of your normal stressors being immediately present. Maybe you turn off your phone and you just write. And when you do it that way, it's this great cathartic escape from all the stuff that's going on. And the writing is also tends to be really, passionate and emotionally authentic and charged. So, yeah, I think you just need to kind of make that space for yourself every day and retreat into it in some cases. And it can really be quite powerful. And, it's a much better result for you and how you feel than if you just let stress wash over you and you're like, oh my God, I have so much going on. I don't have time to write today. And then, end up feeling like there was much meaning behind your suffering at the end.
Yeah, definitely. So this right here kind of goes with what writing in the darkest moments does create my favorite genre as a reader. So definitely whenever, like, some of my best writing comes when my depression kicks in or doubles up. And that's when the book actually makes me cry or makes me angry. My feelings go through the words. And if it makes me cry, I know it's going to make the readers cry. And therefore, they're going to tie in more to my characters in my book. So I hate to say that stress and some issues is a good thing.
Right, but the barrier between what's good for your writing and then not to pass that point where you don't want to write because you're too depressed or too upset.
Right.
And, I think when you're in that sort of zone of sadness and anger and stuff, the important thing is to get down sort of the seeds about what you're feeling. And maybe it's just little details that you notice that you wouldn't notice in any other mental state. And then if your life calms down and you're sitting on some beach in Hawaii on vacation, that's a great time to do sort of mechanical stuff like fleshing out scenes or revision or whatever. But if you don't have those emotionally motivated and charged like seeds that you've captured when you had the opportunity, then you're not going to have much like feeling or motivation behind your writing, I feel like.
Let's see. Rita says, your writing groups and sprints are the best for keeping up with the progress, accountabilities, and know that you're not alone. And this can also help with venting the stress and working through the issues that you may have that might be blocking you from writing too, is because whenever you have a writing group, they know what you're going through. They can relate better than like a family member or even your significant other, because they're in the trenches with you, so to speak. Eva says, what she says, stress from life in general. I find poetry and blogging is where I write when life is too much for fiction.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah. Accountability. Yeah. Let's see. Rita says, when I'm super stressed, especially after I'm babysitting for 10 hours, I can't write. And that is when you know yourself, because I'm sorry, babysitting for 10 hours, I don't want to do anything. No.
No, that's when you watch a movie or play a game.
Right. You plan for the next day of writing, because that way you've got something done that's in the creative process, but then you rest and you read well.
Then you gotta deal with burnout from watching a kid then trying to write.
Even when I worked retail, doing 10-hour shifts there, and I would come home and I'd be like, I'm going to bed.
That's my sister.
Because there's just some days where you do have to rest. You do have to take the time for yourself and for self-care. And it's
right. That's Lauren, because she works in a warehouse and it's physically demanding, and she comes out of sleep. She's like, I feel bad not writing, but I'm like, you gotta do what's best for you. Like, just write on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly. See, Eva says, my Substack about my grandson's death was my most read. That's not my genre as a writer. That was people reading my life. Two different beasts for me, fiction and nonfiction. Yeah. A large readership didn't feel successful, felt more like a hug. There you go. Than a book deal.
But I do feel like an experience like that definitely informs future fiction you write and lets you, I think there's this kind of dismissive cop-out that you get from mainstream publishing where they dismiss like genre fiction as just being this, this kind of dalliance that is kind of mass produced and, one story after the next. But there's really no reason that you can't put as much character transformation and, emotional underpinnings as you want into any genre of fiction.
Right.
And I think that after you go through an experience like that, it informs your future writing, where you can write characters who are in maybe similar situations a lot more, in a lot more gripping way.
Right. And you never know what that kind of writing is going to do for the reader that reads it. Maybe they're going through the same situation and they need that hug that you wrote.
There was I forget the name of the panelist, but at one of the Comic-Con panels I attended, that was about how to create psychologically gripping characters. And the moderator of the panel was actually in the mental health field, and he said that there had been numerous occasions where he said he had a patient who said, I was describing their condition, and they're like, it's like that movie, or it's like that book. Have you ever read this book with this one character? That's exactly what I'm going through. And he said that there have been multiple cases where people basically said that finding this character they could relate to who was going through an experience like they had been through made them feel not alone. And so he was kind of stressing to the authors in the crowd that you could actually save a life if you're willing to be emotionally open enough in your writing like that.
Exactly. Let's see. And Rita says, and those children are so much different than raising. Yeah, they always are, because I don't know. So there's only been a handful of times where somebody else's kid has been better behaved than the ones in my family. Mostly because I think the ones in my family are always scared to death of dad or mom or whatever, and they act like it.
Also, learn hard with children: do not give them sugar. That's when they turn to demons.
Yeah, that's the reason why we never had kids, because my mom looked at me one day and she's like, your kid would be the Antichrist. And I'm like, okay. Eva says, definitely impacts us for sure. Yes, I'm glad I wrote what I'd write over this grief journey. Yeah. John's point about not experiencing this again the way I experience it now and before. Yes. Sometimes she finds herself grasping at feels I had last week or last month. Yes. And that will happen for years. There'll be a certain smell that comes across your path and you'll just go back to a moment, and yeah.
Well, especially when you're going through that kind of trauma and you're writing it down, and then you go back and you read it like a year later, and there are all these details you forgot because you were going through so much, like you had so much PTSD in the mix that you didn't really encode the memories of the minute by minute stuff. And the minute by minute stuff is what really was the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yes, that's for another stream. That might be one of mine and my husband's podcast. Mom didn't mean it in a bad way. not really. I mean, she meant it as a joke, because my mom was absolutely wonderful. It was just that I was rather manipulative as a child. And when she met my husband, and my husband's so smart, she said that those two together, it would make the Antichrist. So,
Oh, you can't be bad. My mom told my older sister that her daughter is her reincarnated.
oh gosh. Yeah. Let's see. I wrote how I got the news the day after it happened. I haven't reread that at all. It wasn't pretty, I'm sure, but I knew I wanted to remember it. Yeah. I can remember it now because I wrote it then. Everything else is a blur. Yeah. It's just like having a photo of the moment. Years later, you don't really remember what happened at the aquarium, what exactly you saw or anything like that. But then you have that photo and it solidifies that memory, and you know what happened in that moment. All right. Yeah, I'm clicking the wrong things. Let's get to the right tab. There we go. All right. So let's do this one. Do you believe authors, like in the same genre, are competitors or allies in the same field? And whoever wants to go first, go for it.
I mean, you'd wish that they would be polite and like help you get your butt out there or help you get support, but it's more likely that other writers see you as in competition and they'll try to sabotage or steal your sales if they can get it for themselves instead.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in my experience, it's definitely more on the side of allies. You know, I think it's not completely accurate to look at books like laundry detergent, where like you need a certain amount of them each month, and you go there and you pick one on the shelf, and by picking that one, you're not picking the other, because ultimately, like when you go to the bookstore, you're holding one book and it looks good, and you know, if you're like me and you have no like, you know, financial like sense of responsibility, you just see another book and you're like, ooh, that's a shiny book, and then you get that, and then you get a third one, and then, you know, maybe it takes you a while to read them, but you're still, your intake of books isn't like based on a fixed resource. What the fixed resource is your time. And what that's ultimately going to come down to is, you know, you're going to start reading a book and it's either going to grip you, or it's going to go back on the nightstand and you'll grab one of the others from the inappropriately large pile of books on your nightstand. And, you know, I think where you see the people being allies is where, you know, people will help promote each other, or they'll, you know, write blurbs for each other's books. And where you see the competition is sort of after the book is out, and then, you know, people are kind of comparing each other's like sales figures, or comparing their, you know, sort of public engagements and things like that. And there tends to be this competition there, some of which is healthy because it can be motivating, and then other parts of it can be kind of self-defeating because you're, you know, why am I not stacking up to this other author, for instance? And, you know, the important thing to keep in mind is it's kind of like music, right? Like the person who's selling the most music is absolutely not necessarily the person who's coming up with the highest quality music. And I think we've all read best-selling books where you're looking through it and you're like, you know, this book is crap. Like how do people like this? And then you'll see some other book that no one's ever even heard of that's brilliantly written. So, you know, I think it's important to keep in mind that there isn't necessarily correlation in the short term between the quality of someone's work and how much success it has. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly always people who are wanting to steal ideas and be unfairly competitive. And those are just people to kind of cut out of your life.
I agree, but also just had experience doing BotterCon that it seems like if you have like little small nets of people that are friends of you to help you sell your book, that's easier compared to being with strangers who just see you as being in their way and they'll try to take advantage of your good nature or try to steal someone from your table, try and get your book because they think their book's better than yours, in a sense.
Yeah. It all really just depends on the person, because
Agreed.
a lot of us, take AuthorTube for instance, most of us help support one another. We put up ads for somebody else's debut or somebody else's launch, or Kickstarter campaign. But then there are others who kind of just stay in their own pond. They don't hinder, but they don't help either. And then there are others that they get in certain circles and they just try to tear each other down. And again, it's just depends on the person. And comparison is a thief of joy, like Teddy Roosevelt said. So whenever you compare yourself to others, yeah, it's going to be a competition against that person, whoever you're comparing yourself to. So if they do the same thing, maybe that negativity just blossoms, and that's the reason why they're tearing you down, because you're doing something better than they are. And that's on them, you know? And that's when you cut them out of your life, because you don't need that kind of negativity. And Cat Paw says allies. Rita says should be allies, but it depends on so many variables. Yep. Capitalism requires one or the other, perhaps, but that in general, I think, see all authors as a collective that doesn't work together. Neither ally nor competitor. Yeah. Staying,
Well, I think, you know, sort of at the most rarefied levels of capitalism, where you've got someone who's just a true craftsperson, and, you know, they make the best, you know, leather boots or the best pocket watch or whatever it is. There's always sort of an admiration that those artisans share, but at the same time, there's also that sort of competition once the product's out there and they're trying to, you know, see who's getting well reviewed. And so it's interesting though. But I think, you know, when people are generally willing to give you a leg up if they, you know, if you give them kind of enough reason to, and approach them openly and honestly enough. And it's kind of the people who you're sort of in the same pond with for a really long time, and you keep passing each other, that maybe you start to feel more competition with.
I also think you have to be careful because also when imposter syndrome appears, because of the competition, sometimes you'll compare yourself to someone that may be more successful than you at the moment.
Yeah, but I think, generally speaking, I guess my summary statement would just be that I think it's best for the author to look at the world as a world of potential allies than a world of potential competitors, because then it kind of makes you act in good faith. And I think there's something behind the golden rule, which is do unto others as my golden rule, which is do unto others as they do unto you. And until someone's done unto you, you really have no idea, and you should give them the benefit of the doubt. And then if they turn out to be like, it's like if you hold the door for somebody and you let them catch up and they don't even thank you, and you just say, oh, well, you're welcome, and then you just would never hold the door for them again. So but you should still, no matter how many times that happens to you, you should still hold the door for like a random person.
Right. Exactly. Eva says neighbors all paying their dues and sometimes blaming the ugly house on the block for problems.
That's great.
Yeah, neither. I think as far as support in the community and friends group is often put on those with more reach to be more supportive. Yeah. And I can't talk today. Sorry.
What's in that
coffee? Yeah. Need some more coffee. While those who are just supportive aren't enough without reach. Yeah. Someone not liking us in itself isn't a smear campaign. Yeah.
Well, I was seeing it on YouTube where some channels, when they finally blow up, it's like they forget how they got started.
Yeah. And again, that's on that person, because fame gets to some people's heads, and sometimes they come back down and they realize, the roots and who helped them. And other times they do their own thing. And it's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. That's my motto in life. It's fine. Let's see. Now, folks really like to find someone they are better than. AuthorTube is not immune to those folks. Yeah. We're fine.
What's up?
If y'all ever read my work and think, oh, no competition, please let me know, because that's flattering. Devin says can't stay too long, but we'll leave this up for watch time. Thank you. Yard work and then back to school shopping. Awesome. Good luck. Hey, Jenna. Hello. Hope you're doing well. See, Eva says, I think sometimes people see someone with success and only see the start and the present and forget the middle part that was done without the support of the person with the opinion now. Yes, it does make sense. Because just like in books, there's always that saggy middle from the start point to whenever you reach your definition of success. Or because it has to be your definition of success, because it can't be somebody else's definition of success. Otherwise, you're just going to go down the comparison route, and there goes the whole self-loathing and depression, maybe. So, yeah. Let's see. We are running out of questions. Does anybody in the comments have anything they want us to talk about? Like they remember where they started. They just also remember who didn't notice until they got big enough. Yeah. And no matter how popular one is, they can only give so much. Exactly, because they got to protect their time too. To expect more for supporting early is gross too. Just be kind to one another. Yeah. All right. We'll pop this one up. And again, if anybody is in the chat and you have any kind of question whatsoever, just pop it in there and we'll discuss it. Oh, nope. That's the wrong one. See, I'm telling y'all, I need some more coffee. All right. So in the community that you have built as an author, how do you deal with the quote bad apples? So like, do you give them a warning and give them a second chance, or do you try to get all the stories, because there's always another side to the coin? How do you work through the bad apples in your community? Because like your page or something, there's a bad comment or harassment or something like that. John, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, as with music, I think writers are almost an infinite supply. So and this is the problem, right? Because if you're a writer, no matter how good your work is, getting it noticed is hugely difficult. And, the same is true with music. You could have amazing music and, it may not be recognized until long after you're gone. And that's the difference between quality and with how the industry works. And the fact that the industry is sort of already overburdened with stuff in their inbox and they can't possibly, they could do a better job, but a lot of people, just agents and stuff, they just don't even read their slush pile. So there's this infinite supply of people in your community that you interface with. And, your writing community, it's not like, a fishing community or like, just like a hobby, right? You don't just get together and complain about stuff and then go home and that's the extent of your obligation. Like if someone's truly in your writing community, it's someone who you exchange work now and then and you ask for feedback. And so every one of those, contacts is a big time commitment for you. And you have a lot going on, you've got to keep up with your own work and you've got different deadlines and then you've, possibly got side hustles or day jobs and a family and all kinds of other stuff. And so there just kind of isn't enough time out there to keep engaged with everybody. So I find that people who are not contributing a lot, they just sort of just don't make the kind of list as far as who you have time to kind of keep up with. And sadly, there's some good people who also don't make that list and you kind of get to their email a month later because you've been so busy. But I think, what kind of keeps those friendships going is that you always do get back to them at some point and keep in touch. And the people you feel motivated to do that with are kind of the keepers anyway.
Now, see, this is the thing about running your community with a co-person is because Lauren is definitely more friendly and so about the two of us. So she'll give people like multiple chances, she'll forgive, she'll be nice. Where I'm the opposite, like depends on like how bad you burn me. Like it's just a small slight, I'll be distant, but in time forgive you. But if it's something really bad, I will cut off all ties and get revenge.
Got you. I haven't had to deal with like a bad apple in my space, like my channel here or Instagram or anything like that as a writer author. But back when I was doing like RPGs and running them on Insane Journal, mostly, I think it was. Yeah. Which was a lot of fun, by the way. And I wish I could kind of go back to it, but time. But the bad apples in there, we would always, as moderators, come up with a set of rules. If we found somebody was harassing somebody else, we would try to get their side of the story as well and give them a warning. If they continued the actions, then we would ban them from the community. So I think protecting your space is important, but also being the word is leaving me. Diplomatic, there you go, about it is important too, because you don't want something to backlash into you and then that spreads other than what that person did. And it alienates the community from you. Let's see. Eva says, I am me. I block anyone that disrupts things for the sake of disruption. Yeah. I am the judge and jury. I answer to no one else. If I alienate readers or audience, okay.
See, I'm not the only one.
Complaint parties. Yeah. People can create a community to complain about you. It's fine. Let them do it.
That's a mark of success, that you're well known enough that they feel the need to do that. I mean, it's sort of like you can make, it's like hospital food, right? You can make something that you think everybody will be sort of okay with, but in doing so, you're not going to make something that anybody loves or hates, and you kind of need to be willing to have people hate your work in order to make something that people will potentially love.
Yeah.
If I could get a cult fan for every person who hates my work, I would totally take that trade. Like, that's a great deal. Because somebody who hates me is gonna not buy just as many books as someone who's never heard of me. But the people who are like cult fans are gonna tell everybody about it.
Yeah. This right here. But you have heard of me.
Yes, that's great.
I like that. Devin also answered, I have yet to deal with bad apples that require warnings. I'm still too new. Yeah. Same. Eva says, I've called out racism directly several times since 2016. It ruffles feathers to support some things, or did. Most of the riffraff is gone now. But like their reach was always larger than mine. So it wasn't so much me having to block as just alienating people. And that statement supports. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I can't really have much in the writing me. It had more to do with the large community, which is live action roleplay, and how I deal with the bad apples that are quote jealous about me getting accessibility or getting more attention because of my disability, and them taking it out of context or being on faking for attention.
Right. Sorry. Let's see. Eva says the absence of love is not hate. That's for sure. It's indifference. Hate me. That's your healing journey. But this right here is, yeah, notoriety is notoriety. Yeah, I can't even. I should stop trying to talk. Y'all take over. This Eva. Sometimes it's just better to not put coins in that deposit box. Yeah. Definitely. All right. So one last question, and we might get out of here in under the hour, maybe. I don't know. Are there any tactics you've seen other writers or authors practice in their writing career that you would like to try one day? And this can be either, breaking writer's block, or maybe how they time block or something like that. Let's see. John, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's best practices that I should do, and I always try to take the shortcut and skip them, and I always regret it and always have to go back and do it again later. And that's all the sort of developmental writing that you do when you're trying to get to know your characters, and you're, writing up like little interviews with them and what their favorite color is, and all this stuff that's, you don't see an immediate need to know it to write the next scene. But if you don't do it, it's going to be a much more circuitous path, and you're going to have to circle back. And, I'm one of those people who, despite the reality of the fact that, some vast percentage of what you write doesn't make it into your book, I hate writing that stuff, right? It drives me nuts because I don't want to do extra stuff that I'm just going to throw away. But I get that it definitely informs your later writing in the same story and the characters. I think there's also another category of stuff that I would love to do, but like my daily life doesn't allow for it. Like people who go to like kind of I don't know, anything from going to like an in-person MFA program that lasts like months and months, to even people who go to those sort of artistic retreats and they live in like a cabin. Like I would love to go live in a cabin like George Orwell on like the island of Jura and just write and drink scotch for like a year. That sounds amazing, but I'm just not in a position where I could do it yet. But I don't know. I think the most important thing is to just stay open-minded and be willing to try. any techniques you hear about, no matter how crazy they are, because if it's something you could be doing, nobody necessarily needs to know your process later on, and they're really ultimately judging the product. And if it's increasing the quality of the product, then go for it.
I feel like for me, it's the process of just sitting down and within a week having a book actually fully written, instead of procrastinating or self-doubting. And it's oh look, it's a couple months later. It's here's the book, and wishing I was better at getting the process done faster.
Yeah.
So for me, it is kind of like what John was saying, actually building that character profile, but also building out my series Bible, because I feel like I'm missing on a lot of, creating advertisements out of that book Bible. And just having everything at my fingertips instead of having to go back. Oh, I think that was in chapter 2 when I talked about that. And, trying to go back and reread so that I can find the name of whatever town they went through and that happened, kind of thing. So I think just building a good book or series Bible for me would be the thing that I would like to try to do better.
That's a great thing to work on when you have writer's block too, because it's sort of a mechanical thing that you can just do regardless of how inspired you feel. And it's also something that keeps giving you these little glimpses of inspiration. Like you're going back and looking at chapter 2 of this book and you're like, wow, that was pretty cool. I should revisit this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the fun part for writing is creating the character bios and creating characters in general.
Gotcha. Eva says for her, it's actually writing consistently and publishing. Yes. You need to be published, Eva. I believe in you. And Devin says for her, if she could plot, she'd probably write faster. As a person who went from a 100% pantser to somebody who somewhat plots now, plotting could be overrated. It works for some people, other people it doesn't.
And I think it's easier if you're doing a sequel, because you kind of know more of the parts that are in play.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, I could never plot out a brand new book from scratch. I just wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, but when you're co-writing, one person planner, one's a plotter, you gotta be able to relate it when you have it.
You gotta share notes.
Yep.
Jenna says, stop sitting on the books under the bed. Yes, definitely. And that's something, who was it? Was it Stephen King that said that? I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody prolific that mentioned something like that. And I'm like, man, if they have actual books under the bed that they haven't published, and they've published, 200 books, what's under their bed?
Right.
Yeah, my unpublished work can fit in a drawer, I'm proud to say.
Yeah, that's why I have the wheel.
Yeah, the Wheel of Doom. Pick your project. Cat Paul says, let those stories wander out into the world. Haters are going to hate. I need to learn to be okay with that. Yeah.
Haters going to hate. Tater's going to potate.
Devin says, I sit on the couch and add to my series Bible while we watch TV. That's a good plan. Let's see. I love writing up my series notebook with all the chapter summaries. Devin is definitely 100% planter. Let's see. Cat Paul says, I learned yesterday that the weight of ink was totally pantsed. Yes, you can. Yeah, yeah. Huh. Interesting. Let's see. Devin says, my books under the bed have been added to my Ream stories. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all your short stories and stuff, just putting them online, or even your website. If you have a way to build out like a subscription base on your website and just putting everything up on there. Be pretty cool. Let's see. A plotted undrafted pen name. Yeah. Awesome. I don't necessarily have any books under the bed because what would be a book under the bed, it's up on Ream, and I talk about it all the time. It's I'm No Hero. It's probably the worst book that I will ever write, but it's there. And it's for y'all to read. And then I have ideas, like paragraphs on each idea and everything, and those aren't necessarily under the bed. It's just I don't have time to write them yet. So yeah,
I got a pretty good stat under bed.
yeah.
You know, this kind of reminds me of there's this what I think is a great like thing to keep in mind to keep writer's block at bay is that they've actually done psychology studies of like mapping where a writer keeps track of how like in the zone they feel that day. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think the quality of the chapters you wrote today were? And then they've taken that work and they've shown it to like 100 readers, and they've had the 100 readers say, okay, how would you rate this page? How would you rate this page? How would you rate this page? And what's fascinating is that there's like zero correlation between what you, when you were writing, thought was a really good scene that day versus what you thought was kind of, you weren't really feeling motivated or inspired, and you just kind of, forced yourself through it. There's like zero correlation. And I always thought that was really interesting, is that like we as writers have no good sense of like whether we're writing good stuff or bad stuff. It's really this more cumulative kind of a process.
Right. That would be really neat. We have a course that a lot of us have done. It's called the HB90 method, and you time block everything out. There's 30-minute time blocks for the day, and the creator of HB90 method, Sarah, she knows exactly when she's at her like creative height, I guess, during the day, and she schedules her work around that.
And
that's
a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever do. I'm an Aquarius, so this is me, every minute of every day, and I think I also have ADHD or something where I just can't focus on one thing every single day at say 8 o'clock in the morning.
I think I've struggled with that, and the best solution I've found is to, as soon as you wake up, before you're awake enough to realize just how much you don't want to work on writing, you just start writing. And you almost, if you do it literally right after you open your eyes, you almost still have some of that like dream fluidity in your mental processes that you can kind of harness, and you don't have those voices telling you to go do all these other things you're supposed to do today, or how much your writing sucks, or whatever else.
That's a good idea. So I wake up, I play games. It's like, oh, look, 4 hours later.
Oh, it is a good idea. I'm going to have to definitely try that, because I haven't tried that before.
Same.
And you can always wake up half hour earlier is the only, the saving grace of that is no matter how busy your schedule gets, and, if it just becomes putting out fires all day, if you haven't checked your email yet and you start writing, then there's no fires yet.
Right. What you don't know can't hurt you yet.
Yet fewer.
That fire can grow on its own without you.
Somebody else can handle it for a while.
Must move. I still have time.
Even since I'm writing both good and bad stuff. This chat is a great example of my work. Eva is the flame thrower and fanner.
Oh, don't learn hear that.
She is a great support system in and just of herself. Yes, blocked planning. Why some schools thrive on it too. Exactly. Eva, so insightful, amusing, and astute. Oh, Devin's an Aquarius too. Yes. Yes, please share your secrets. I can probably definitely use them. Bus pickup as it is at 6:45 a.m. Gosh, I have to work. What will life be like next week? Who knows? Just like
Yeah, I mean, the other one thing I've noticed is that when you get inundated with life, and it's that way enough months in a row, and you start realizing like there's never going to be a time, or not for a long time, where I'm going to just like have this block of like, oh, I can finally get back to writing,
Right.
and recognizing that you're sort of in this pattern of just controlled chaos every day. Once you recognize that, you can kind of say, okay, like if I just stay on this track I'm on, I'm just not going to get anything done. And like a year from now, I'll be able to point to all sorts of very valid reasons that people would totally understand and sympathize with you on. But at the end of the day, just because you have a good reason not to write doesn't mean you should like play that card and use that reason and not write. Because at the end of the day, like, can you look back and say, I advanced some important life goal during this chaotic time? Or were you just sort of responsive and then it just feels like time that you lost to this crisis?
Right. Control the chaos and don't let the chaos control you. And also somebody once said, I forget who it was, but they were talking about planning and scheduling their days. And they allow themselves, I guess, 3 yellow cards, kind of like in soccer, where they are allowed for the week, 7 days, to use one of those 3 cards. And then it resets the next week. One is, I'm not going to get to this. And the other is, I don't want to do this. And the other is, well, it's okay. So they're only allowed to say that and act on that 3 times out of the week.
Interesting.
Yeah. I would have a hard time keeping up with that.
I like it though, because it forces you to compare, right? It forces you to compare your lack of motivation today versus, how unmotivated you're going to feel on like Thursday. So,
Right.
And it makes you keep things in perspective.
Exactly. So that might be a trick that somebody can use for their own schedule and writer's block as well. The older I get, the more time changes. Yeah. Time flies by.
Oh, yeah.
You're 5 years old and waiting for Christmas, where the year seems like 5. Now a month seems like it's a day.
Unless you're staring at a blank page, and then you can live longer.
Or you're avoiding mowing the lawn.
Or doing your job you hate.
Yeah, that too. My son still doesn't have a bus schedule. We have a shorter, so this week is going to be oh no. Doing substitute work since the district is short. I don't know if I will, but shortages do impact our babes. Shame our education doesn't get more funding. Yeah. Blank page stairs. Yes, definitely. Conversation with the blank page. All right. So anything else y'all want to talk about before we go? Maybe? No?
Up to you guys.
All right. Since it's been a little bit over an hour, we'll go ahead and do our outros, and we'll let these people get back to their day. So, Nicole, you want to start, and then John, and then I might do an outro. I don't know.
Well, as usual, thanks for hosting, Sam, and thank you guys for watching the live stream or test and replay. I'm Nicole, and the off me are known as Lunettes Frost. Laura and I run this channel, Ryan Sisters, and our second channel is Lunettes Mist of the Lights. And we also run the Enchanting Tales website. And you can find us on Ko-fi, Reen, and Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks to both of you for having me on, and thanks to everyone for being a great audience. And check out my website and the book, and I've had lots of people who don't like sci-fi who have said that they don't really read sci-fi and they really liked it. My next novel is probably going to be a fantasy novel, so hopefully I can kind of mix it up a bit. But yeah, hope to be back on with you guys soon. We can talk about AI or other kinds of crazy, hard to get your hands around topics.
Yeah, we did not hit that this time. Sorry.
I think it would have been 3 hours if we had tried to do that.
Right. Maybe next time. You are always welcome to join us. I can keep emailing you the links if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. But thank you for joining us again. And for those of you that don't know, I am writer Sam Wicker. I am a romantasy author. You can find all my stuff on Ream, and my co-host information should be down in the description box. And if it isn't yet, I will fix it as soon as we end here. But yes, and Eva posted up John's site. So there we go. Thank you again, and we will see y'all